believe that it is always dangerous to take for granted what we have. Someone said, if you forget history, you're condemned to repeat it. If you forget what happened in the Dark Ages, in the Middle Ages, when church and state united, you're likely to repeat that. Do you think it could be dangerous today in America that we may be drifting to a position where we have forgotten our heritage and this wall of church and state could be eroded? I'm going to show you some amazing things tonight, some startling things. I will show you first that America is predicted in Bible prophecy. It's predicted to rise and give freedom. I'll show you secondly that prophecy predicts there are some erosions that will take place, and even in America, church and state will unite again. Then we'll share just how that's going to happen. And then we're going to look at some Supreme Court decisions that have already taken place, and we're going to look at some religious leaders in America, both Catholic and Protestant, who are desiring a unity of church and state to bring what they believe is God's favor upon this country. This may be one of the most amazing lectures you've ever sat through in all of your life. It'll open eyes from Bible prophecy. You know, when you look at the Statue of Liberty, no American can look at that without feeling a warmth in their heart for who we are. And that statement on the Statue of Liberty that says, "Keep ancient lands, your storied pomp," cries she with silent lips. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." For years, for centuries, America has been that open door for the refuge of all lands. For years, America has been the home of the free and the land of the brave. Don't we want it to stay that way?
Amen.
Indeed we do. Now, when a nation or ancient kingdom plays a significant part in the fulfillment of God's purposes, that empire is described by the Bible prophets. So when a nation is going to play a part, and like America that played such a significant part, you know, it would be so surprising if a nation that provided freedom for the world, if a nation that provided religious and civil freedom, it would be so incredibly surprising if indeed that nation was not brought to bear in Bible prophecy. So we go to Revelation again, chapter 13, verse 11. We see a second beast mentioned there in Revelation 13:11. We looked at the first beast on Friday night. We saw that the first beast represented the medieval church, the papacy, that would unite with the state. Then it says in Revelation 13, verse 11, "Then I saw another beast." Now notice this is another. It's not the same, so it has to be a second one. "Another beast coming up out of the earth." This word "coming up" means springing up. It's kind of like a seed you put in the ground, and at the springtime it springs up out of the earth. Remember, the first beast came up out of the sea. The second beast comes up out of the earth. He has 2 horns like a lamb. Notice the first beast that we studied about had 10 horns, and there were 10 crowns on them, representing the 10 divisions of the Roman Empire. Like a lamb is noted for its innocence, its freedom, and spoke like a dragon. What would this possibly represent? Let's look at the prophecy more closely. The books of Daniel and the book of Revelation are meant to be studied together. In Daniel 7, verse 23, it says, "Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom on the earth." Now, in Bible prophecy, a beast represents a king or a kingdom. Could be a political kingdom, or could be a religious kingdom. So here in Bible prophecy, a beast always represents a kingdom. Now that should not be surprising to us, because even today we use beasts for different nations. If I said to you today, what nation is represented by a bear? what would you say?
Russia.
Russia, certainly. If I said, what nation do they use as a symbol of a lion today? What would you say? England. And what's the symbol of America today?
Eagle.
An eagle, right? So we do that today. Now, don't misunderstand me. The Bayer in Bible prophecy today is not Russia, okay? But my point is that we use nations. We use nations as beasts or animals. And so the Bible did that too. And this second beast, the second beast represents a political power, is what it represents, that rises up. Now notice, it says it rises up out of the earth. The first beast rises up out of the sea. What does the sea represent? Revelation 11, verse 15. The waters which you saw are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So the water represents what, everybody? The water represents what? Peoples or multitude. So when a beast, what does the beast represent? A what? Political power rises up out of the sea. It rises up out of a what? Populated area. But when you have a beast, a political power rising up out of the earth, it must be the opposite of the sea, which is what? A sparsely populated or an unpopulated area. So here's three questions we have to ask about this second beast. One, where does it rise? Well, it comes up out of the earth. What does the earth represent? It's the opposite of the sea. It represents, the first beast rises up out of the sea, out of a peopled area. So the beast power of Revelation 13 rises up out of populated Europe. The second beast, the new beast or nation, comes up out of the earth or a relatively unpopulated area. So we have to say, was there any nation rising up out of an unpopulated area? Well, many nations have risen up under unpopulated areas. So that's not the only identification. We need to nail this down more clearly. The second question is, when does this power arise? When does this power arise? Well, can we find out? Revelation 13:10 talks about the first beast, the papacy, going into captivity. It says, he who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. So at the same time that the first beast, the first power, goes into captivity, the second beast, the second power, rises. Now, you remember that we looked at 6 identifying marks of that first beast to identify it as the church-state union of papal Rome and pagan Rome during the Middle Ages. We found that that first beast, the papacy, would receive its authority from pagan Rome, the devil working through pagan Rome, and the dragon. And we noticed that when Constantine saw his empire falling apart, that he was going to move it from Rome to Constantinople. And as he was going to move this from Rome to Constantinople, he then had to have somebody in the throne room of Rome. And so what does he do? He turns civil and religious authority over to the Pope of Rome. And he leaves his seat vacant. It was years later that the Pope finally received the full acknowledgement of the state for civil union. And we'll talk about that shortly. The second thing we noticed about that first beast was the first beast was a worldwide system of worship. It was a system that would grow in worship. The third thing we noted about it is that it would claim the authority to forgive sin. It would take the privilege and power of God's equal. The fourth thing we noticed about it was a very clear mathematical proof. And it was Justinian, the pagan Roman emperor, that gave to the Pope of Rome, who was Vigilus II at the time, both civil and religious authority. The Bible said that this Dark Ages period, or this supremacy of the papacy, would last for 1,260 years. We studied that last time, down to 1798. What happened in 1798? Napoleon was in the north, and he looked down and he saw a threat in the Pope of Rome. So he sent his general, Berthier, to Rome, and he took the Pope of Rome captive. So exactly when Bible prophecy said it would happen. Justinian, the pagan Roman emperor, gives to Vigilius II in 538 civil and religious authority. The Bible predicted that 1,260 years later, in 1798, the Pope would be taken captive. That happened exactly like the Bible predicted.